Welcome to the Nutrition Diva podcast, where we take a closer look at nutrition trends, research, and guidelines to help you make more informed, confident choices about what you eat. I'm your host, Monica Reinagel, and today's topic amounts to a hill of beans. We are scheduled to update the dietary guidelines for Americans this year. And the Scientific Advisory Committee recently submitted their report and their recommendations, which influence nutrition policies and programs for the next 5 years. One of the committee's new recommendations was that Americans aim to consume 2.5 cups of beans or lentils per week. Now, that's almost double the previous recommendation of 1.5 cups per week. And the truth is, most Americans don't come even close to meeting the old target. Today, I want to take a closer look at the rationale behind this change in guidance, as well as some of the reasons that so many Americans, maybe you, remain somewhat indifferent to the musical fruit. And if you don't get that reference, it's clearly been too long since you were in the 3rd grade. And finally, assuming I am able to make a compelling case for why beans deserve a bigger place on your plate, I'll offer you some practical tips on how to make that happen. The Dietary Guidance Advisory Committee's rationale for increasing bean consumption is based on multiple health and sustainability benefits. Beans are an excellent source of both protein and fiber, of course, is an essential nutrient that many Americans struggle to get enough of. Unlike meat, which offers lots of protein but no fiber, or grains, which provide fiber but not very much protein, beans are the whole package. Not only that, but they are eminently affordable. And with grocery prices on everyone's mind these days, that's a welcome bonus. Increased bean consumption is linked to a reduced risk of heart disease, improved blood sugar control, better digestive health, and even weight management due to their high fiber and high protein content. And additionally, beans are a highly sustainable crop, requiring fewer natural resources to produce while enriching the soil health. So by encouraging greater bean consumption, the DGAC aims to improve overall public health while also promoting more environmentally friendly food choices. But if beans are such a nutritional, environmental, and economic win, well, why aren't we already eating more of them? I think there are a few key reasons. Concerns about digestibility. Yeah, we're going to have to talk about gas. But also lack of familiarity or habit, and the perception that beans are boring or plain, even concerns about anti-nutrients. So let's tackle these one by one. Beans have earned that reputation as the musical fruit because they contain complex carbohydrates that are somewhat difficult for our digestive enzymes to break down. So instead, they travel on to the large intestine where bacteria ferment them, and that produces gas as a byproduct. The good news is that people who eat beans more frequently generally experience less gas because the digestive system gradually adjusts. So one tip for easing gas from beans is to slowly increase your consumption and then continue to eat them regularly. An over-the-counter enzyme supplement like Beano can also help. And maybe it also helps to reframe that temporary digestive discomfort as evidence of an improving microbiome. Now, for some people, unfortunately, beans really aren't an option. For those with irritable bowel syndrome, for example, beans may cause more than just transient discomfort. However, it is worth pointing out that not everyone with IBS reacts the same way to all potentially problematic foods. And the FODMAP elimination diet that I've discussed in previous episodes can help pinpoint which specific foods are causing distress, and it isn't always the beans. Sometimes dairy or other foods are actually the primary triggers. Some people avoid beans due to concerns about these so-called anti-nutrients, particularly phytic acid and lectins. These compounds have developed a bit of a bad reputation, but most, if not all, of the fears surrounding them is completely overblown. Phytic acid, which is found in beans and legumes, can bind to certain minerals, such as iron and calcium, and reduce their absorption. On the other hand, phytic acid also plays a beneficial role in the body, acting as an antioxidant and actually slowing the breakdown of bone tissue. So, in fact, people with more phytic acid in their diet tend to have a lower risk of bone fractures. And I have a lot more to say about the benefits of phytic acid in episode number 612. Lectins are another commonly cited concern with beans. However, most lectins found in plant foods are harmless and may even have some beneficial effects, such as supporting immune function. And for more on lectins, please check out episode number 471. Another reason that people don't eat more beans is pretty simple. It's just habit. If you did not grow up eating beans regularly, then they might not be something that you naturally reach for when you're planning your meals. A lot of traditional American meals are centered around meat, with beans playing more of a supporting role, if they show up at all. So if you don't already have a bunch of favorite go-to bean dishes in your repertoire, it may just not even occur to you to use them. And finally, I think a lot of people think of beans as boring, but that's mostly because they've only experienced a very narrow slice of what beans have to offer. Most Americans stick to the same handful of familiar varieties: black beans, kidney beans, and chickpeas. But in reality, there are hundreds of types of beans, each with its own unique flavor, texture, and culinary uses. And then there's the world of gourmet heirloom beans. That just takes the conversation to a whole new level. These specialty beans are grown for their superior taste and texture, and they come in an amazing array of different colors and varieties. Some are creamy, others are nutty, earthy, some of them are even slightly sweet. And cooking with these heirloom beans can be a revelation if you've never tried it. They have a richness and a depth of flavor that mass market beans just simply don't offer. So even at $6 or $8 a pound, these heirloom beans are still far more affordable than meat or highly processed plant-based protein alternatives, although there's a place for those as well. But I think once you start tapping into the vast variety of beans or get into researching creative recipes for them, you'll find that beans get a lot more interesting in a hurry. So let's turn all of this into a little practical advice. How do you actually start eating more beans? One easy approach is to work them into the foods that you're already eating. So adding a handful of beans to a salad, or tossing them into a soup or stew, or mixing them into grain bowls or pasta dishes. These are all simple, low-effort ways to boost your intake. You can also swap in beans where you might otherwise use something else. So maybe hummus instead of mayo on a sandwich or wrap, or refried beans instead of ground beef on a taco, or a white bean dip instead of queso. But next, we can up the ante by planning a couple of meals each week where beans take center stage. So this could be a hearty bean soup or a lentil curry, a black bean burger, or just a simple beans and rice or beans and greens dish. And this is where those heirloom beans can really shine, bringing a whole new dimension of flavor and texture to the table. If you need more inspiration, it is as close as your keyboard. Check your favorite recipe sites, or just type the kind of bean you want to cook and the word recipe into your search engine. And I've also found that places that sell heirloom beans are also really good sources for creative recipes. And finally, because they sometimes require a bit more preparation, beans may just seem like too much of a hassle. Well, you can make your life easier just by mastering a couple of easy cooking methods. My two favorite ways to cook dried beans are either in my Instant Pot or in a Dutch oven. You start them on the stove top, and then after they come to a boil, you cover them and put the whole pot into the oven for a couple of hours. It couldn't be simpler. And cooked beans also really freeze well, so go ahead and make a big batch and put some in the freezer. And finally, while I am somewhat partial to dried beans, especially now that I've figured out how to cook them easily, I always keep canned beans in the pantry because they're just so darned convenient. So what do you think? Is 2.5 cups of beans or lentils per week an attainable goal for you? How much of an adjustment would that represent in your life? How can you make this into a culinary adventure? I'll be interested to hear how this goes for you, and you can email me at nutrition@quickanddirtytips.com or leave me a message at 443-961-6206. I'd also like to invite you to check out my other podcast. It's called The Change Academy, where we explore the art and science of creating positive behavior change. You can find it on all the major podcast platforms and apps. Just search for Change Academy. Nutrition Diva is a Quick and Dirty Tips podcast, and our team includes Brandon Getchis, Davina Tomlin, Holly Hutchings, Nathan Sems, Morgan Christensen, and Nathaniel Hoops. That's it for this episode. Thanks so much for listening. I'll be back next week.